Students, in the previous class we have derived equation of motion for transverse vibration of a string of a taut string, and we said that tension remains constant because y, which is transverse deflection, is fairly small enough when compared to length dimension of that string. And for that we have derived differential equation which happens to be something like this. That was del square y by del x square, that was equal to 1 over c square into del square y by del t square. Okay, we said that this is what is the differential equation of the system. Okay, so and we also have seen that there are two initial conditions and two boundary conditions. Initial conditions are specified for all x values but at time t equal to 0, and it's like y at all x and 0, we specified that to be equal to g of x, and derivative of y with respect to time, that is the velocity. Okay, we specified that also for all x values at time t equal to 0, and which was equal to f of x, some other function. Along with that we have, these are initial conditions, and we also have specified boundary conditions along with that. Boundary conditions were like this: y at x is equal to 0 and time, all time t, okay, always at that particular x, y has to be equal to 0, since we have left edge fixed. Okay, and we also knew that on the other hand, that is on the right hand side, where length dimension is equal to L, at that location where x is equal to L, y should always be equal to 0, that is for all time t y should be equal to 0. So these are boundary conditions, these are two boundary conditions, and these are two initial conditions. It is therefore is called as initial boundary value problem or boundary initial value problem, BVIP. Okay, and since these initial conditions are these boundary conditions are specified at 2 points. Okay, so this is 2-point boundary value problem or 2-point boundary initial value problem. So it's a 2-point boundary initial value problem that we have considered, and this equation whatever that we have arrived at is a partial differential equation, because there are two variables which are governing what is going to be y. So x and t, on these two variables value of y depends upon. Okay, therefore this is initial boundary value problem, and the equation that we have with us is partial differential equation. And now we want to see how can we solve this problem. Okay, so for solving this problem, one of the very simplest way that people follow and that I am going to talk about is called as a variable separable form. Okay, for certain boundary initial conditions you can carry out this activity, or rather certain boundary conditions you can do this. And what is that variable separable form that we are going to see. So what we do is we separate variables that we right now know that we want to find out y, okay, which depends on x and t. However, we don't know what is going to be that function. Okay, so it can be any function which will be dependent on x and t, but what we are assuming over here is that its dependence on x is indifferent to t, that is it is different from it doesn't depend on t and x simultaneously, or in the other words you can separate out that dependence. So you can write it down in this way. Okay, so let me write it down in this way. I can write down this as capital X function of small x and capital T function of small t. So I am writing down y, which is unknown function, as multiplication of two unknown functions. One is capital X and another one is capital T, and I am saying that capital X is function of small x alone and capital T is function of small t alone. That is, capital X depends on space only and it doesn't change with time, whereas capital T depends on time only, it varies with time but it doesn't at all depend on space. So it has got no any space dependence, this one. Okay, so it is not written in terms of space, it is not written in terms of time. And multiplication of these two, if you multiply these two functions, then what you get is y, which varies along x as well as along t. So variation along x you are separating out from variation along t. That is what is variable separation. So independent variables which are x and t, okay, those dependence on these two independent variables have been separated out by us, and this is what is that variable separable form. So we are assuming that y is equal to capital X, which is function of x alone, times capital T, which is function of small t alone. Okay, and now we are going to put this approximation in our differential equation. So let me just invoke that differential equation. That differential equation that we were talking about is this: del square y by del x square is equal to 1 over c square, or rho by t, whatever that you feel like writing, times del square y by del t square. Now if you find out partial derivative of y with respect to x, then you will be differentiating this function alone, and this function, since it doesn't have any x into it, okay, so t doesn't at all depend on x. So if you differentiate y partially with x, then t will not change at all, it will remain as is. So del square y by del x square can be written as t of t times d square capital X by d small x square. Okay, so you just have to differentiate twice this capital X function, okay, and multiply by t to get this partial derivative of y with respect to x. In the similar fashion, I can find out derivative with respect to time, in which x will not change, it will remain as is, since it is function of space alone and it doesn't have any time contribution, it doesn't change with time, so it will remain as is. And what is going to be differentiated is only t variable or t function, and we are going to write it this way. Okay, so this is what is partial differentiation of y with respect to time, this is what is partial differentiation of y with respect to space. Okay, now I am going to put these values in this equation, and if I do so, then what I get is something like this. I'll write it. So we get to see t of t times del square x by del x square is equal to x of x divided by c square into del square t by it's not del square, it's d square t by dt square. Okay, now what I'll be doing is I'll be slightly changing variables I'll be changing their position. So I'll bring this t of t on this side, and this x I'll be bringing on the other side. I'll also be pulling this c square over here. Okay, so I'll get something like this: c square into 1 over x of x into d square x by d small x square is equal to 1 over t of t into d square capital T divided by d small t square. Okay, now you will be able to appreciate one thing over here. See, what is this thing? Okay, this is function of time alone. What is this thing? This is second derivative of capital T, which is again going to be function of time alone. Similarly, you see over here, what is here? It is function of x alone, right? This is differentiation of capital X, so it is again going to be function of x alone. So LHS is function of x alone, RHS is function of time alone, and you are saying that these two are always equal. Okay, for all space and time this equilibrium holds. Okay, so this equal to sign is true for all space and all time. So if it has to happen, if some function of x has to be always equal to some function of time, then this is possible only when both of them are constant. Okay, both of them are equal and that they are equal to a constant. So when they are equal to a constant value, then only it is possible, and it can further be shown mathematically, which we are not going to do over here in this particular class, but it can certainly be proven that this should be equal to a negative number, and hence we'll be calling it as a minus lambda square. Okay, so it has to be a negative number. So lambda square, where lambda is a real number, so if lambda is real, then lambda square will always be positive, and hence minus lambda square will always be negative. You can prove it that way. However, right now we are assuming that this is true. Okay, and let's go ahead with that assumption and let's try to see that what is it that we get. Okay, so what I'll be doing is, now I'll be dividing this single equation into two different equations. So what I have obtained, c square by capital X, which is function of small x, times d square capital X by d small x square. This is equal to minus lambda square, and I also know that 1 over capital T, which is function of small t, times d square capital T by dt square. This is equal to minus lambda square. So my initial single partial differential equation, okay, I have been able to divide it into two differential equations, and these two differential equations are ordinary differential equations. Now they are no more partial differential equations, but I have decoupled them into two different equations, which are two different ordinary differential equations. Okay, and now I will be solving these two differential equations further. Okay, so let's try to see how do we do that. Okay, so for that I'll be picking up this first. Okay, so let's try to start with that equation. So what is that equation? That equation is 1 over t of t into d square t by dt square is equal to minus lambda square. I can rewrite this as d square t by dt square plus lambda square t of t equal to 0. Okay, so this is what is the differential equation that I have, and I will find it from this equation. I know how to find out solution of this. So it is very much similar to what we have been doing so far. So what we used to do is x double dot plus omega square x equal to 0. Okay, so it is the same equation that we see over here, right? So we know what is the solution of x in such case. So you'll be able to find out what is t. So t is nothing but, you can replace this lambda square by omega square. Okay, so let me say that lambda is nothing but omega. Okay, then I'll be writing it in this fashion, that lambda is equal to t is equal to a cosine omega t plus b sine omega t. Okay, this is the solution of this differential equation. Okay, we have already solved this differential equation, and it comes out to be this way, where omega is nothing but lambda. Okay, so I am writing down omega as lambda. I am just changing this lambda to omega and putting this omega over here. You could have gone ahead with lambda, no, not an issue. But in order to be consistent with what we have been doing so far, I am changing it to omega. Okay, fine. So we have found out t part. Now we know what is that temporal dependence. So y, which is it's a small y. So y, which is multiplication of capital X times capital T, in that we know what is this, right? Capital T, we know that it is nothing but this one. Okay, but still we don't know what is this capital X, and now let's try to see what is that capital X. Okay, so capital X, in order to find out that capital X, I need to go back to this equation and let's try to solve that equation. Okay, so let me pick up that equation, which is c square by Let me just see to it. Yeah, this is square by x times d square x by d small x square. This is equal to minus lambda square, which is equal to minus omega square. Okay, which essentially is equal to d square capital X by d small x square plus omega square by c square into capital X equal to 0. Okay, and we now know that this is again of the same form, and hence we can find out capital X, which is going to depend on x small x. This was capital T, which was function of time, and now we are going to find out capital X, which is function of space variable, and capital X is going to come something like this. It will be, we already have used A, B, and I don't want to use C, D, so I'll be calling it as A2 cosine of omega by C T plus B2 sine of omega by C T. Okay, so this is what is capital X. Now we have found out capital X as well as capital T, and so I can say that I know expression of y, and that expression of y is what? Expression of y is equal to multiplication of this capital X into multiplication into this T, which is equal to A2 cosine of omega by C X. Have I written it appropriately? Yeah, I have made mistake over here. This is not function of time, this is function of space, which is X. Okay, so it has to be X over here, plus B2 sine of omega by C into X. This whole stuff multiplied by A cosine of omega t plus B sine of omega t. Okay, so this is what is expression of y. So are we done with solving our differential equation? No, not yet. We still have boundary conditions and initial conditions to satisfy. So unless and until I satisfy boundary conditions and initial conditions, I cannot say that I have obtained a solution. Okay, so what we need to do? We need to go ahead and incorporate all those boundary conditions and initial conditions. We'll be starting with boundary conditions first. We incorporate boundary conditions beforehand before going to initial conditions. So let's see boundary conditions. So we'll be seeing boundary conditions for the problem that right now we are tackling, which is that of a fixed string. Okay, string which is fixed at both ends. Okay, you can have very different boundary conditions than this, but we are firstly considering this fixed string. So what are boundary conditions that we have found out? So we have found out that y at x is equal to 0 and for all time t that happens to be equal to 0, and y at x is equal to L and all time t again that should be equal to 0. Okay, so let's try to go ahead and try to see whether we get any solution for this. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we'll be seeing this expression of y, and what we'll be doing is we'll be evaluating this for x is equal to 0. Okay, and for all initial condition for all time t. So if you put x is equal to 0, then what you get, y comes out to be equal to y at x is equal to 0 and at all time t that happens to be equal to, the sine term will go away, cosine term will give you 1, so you will be left with only a2 times, you will have this term sitting over here, a cosine omega t plus b sine omega t. So for all time t, whatever be the time value, at all those time values you need this term to be equal to 0. Now if this has to happen for all time t, this is essential that any time t if you see, then you should get a2 times this bracket is equal to 0. So this is possible only when either a2 is 0 or this is 0, right? This cannot be 0 for all time, right? So it will be, at times it can be 0, at times it cannot be 0. So if it has to be 0 at all times, then the only possibility that we are left with is a2 being equal to 0. So let's say that a2 is equal to 0. Okay, so this term doesn't exist at all for the kind of boundary conditions that we have selected, and for this boundary condition in particular you cannot have a2 specified. Okay, so let's try to see what this boundary condition is giving us. Okay, so whether it is giving us value of other constant b2. Okay, let's try to see. So now we are left with y being equal to b2 sine of omega ct times this a cosine omega t. See, this is x, it's not c, it's not t, this is dependence on x, and we have time dependence over here, and here you have b sine of omega t. Okay, now you will be evaluating this y at x is equal to L and all time t, and if you do so, then what you get is b2 sine of omega c times x times a cosine omega t plus b sine omega t, and this all stuff should be equal to 0. So you have multiplication of three terms. One term is b2, another term is this, which is sine of this x will be L, this is sine omega L by c, and this third term, which is a cosine omega t plus b sine omega t. Multiplication of these three terms should be equal to 0. This is possible when all these three terms are 0, or any one of them is 0, or any two of any two terms from these three terms are 0. So let's try to see what are all possibilities. So let's try to check it out from b2 first. Okay, so can b2 be equal to 0? See, if b2 is equal to 0, then at any x and any t you are going to get y equal to 0. Okay, y equal to 0 is the solution that you are getting, which is a trivial solution, and you don't want that, so you cannot have that solution. Okay, now this third term equal to 0. Okay, third term cannot be equal to 0 at all time t, right? So you cannot have that. So obviously third term is also not equal to 0. So what is the only possibility that you are left with? The second term is equal to 0 at all time. Okay, so we are ending up with this condition that sine of omega LC should be equal to 0. So which essentially means that omega should be such that sine of that omega times LC happens to be equal to 0. So when is sine of any quantity equal to 0? When that quantity, which is omega L by C, is equal to some integer multiple of pi, right? Then only you will get it 0, like 1, 2, 3, then only you will be able to get that as 0. So I'll be calling it as n pi, where n is ranging from 1, 2, 3 to infinity. Okay, so omega can ideally take infinite values. Omega is equal to n times c times pi divided by L, where n can range from 1 to infinity. Okay, these are integers, and n can take any integer value, and still you are going to get that condition satisfied, which is this condition. This condition will be satisfied if you pick any one of these omegas, and these are called as natural frequencies of our system. So we have obtained natural frequencies for which this condition is satisfied. Since this condition is satisfied, we are able to satisfy boundary conditions. So essentially our problem, which is which is our differential equation plus boundary conditions plus initial conditions, so that problem is having a solution. So when problem is having the solution, when omega takes these discrete but infinite values. Omega can take any one of these infinite values, but these values are discretely spaced. Okay, omega cannot take any values. Omega can take any one of these discrete values, which are n times c times pi by l, right? So this is what is the solution of natural frequency. So you have obtained natural frequencies of string under consideration. Okay, so a string which is fixed at both ends and is taut, it will have these natural frequencies. So how many natural frequencies it has got? It has got infinite number of natural frequencies. When we were considering multi-DOF systems, in those cases we said that, let's say for 2 DOF system we have obtained 2 natural frequencies. For 3 DOF system we should get 3 natural frequencies, which are 3 distinctively different natural frequencies. Now I had given you one problem to solve in which you get to see first 2 natural frequencies as 0, 0, right? And then you have third natural frequency, which I guess comes out to be equal to 4. That was 3 DOF system. So when you have 2 natural frequencies which are coming out to be equal to 0, which essentially means that you have not posed the problem correctly, and you are allowing 2 rigid body motions, rigid body movements you are allowing, and that's why you are getting two natural frequencies which are coming out to be equal to 0, which is not actually natural frequency of that 3D OF system, because it is not 3D OF system at all. Okay, so you have not posed that problem correctly. You are yet to constrain something, and that is not constrained, and that's why you feel that it is that problem is rightly posed, but essentially it needs something else, some other constraint needs to be incorporated along with whatever that you have specified, and if you do so, then these natural frequencies will come out to be equal to finite values. Okay, however, in this case, when we were considering these multi-DOF systems, so we were getting as many number of natural frequencies as many number of DOFs we had. Now in this case, where we are considering continuous system, in this case we are getting infinite number of natural frequencies. However, all these infinite natural frequencies are discretely spaced. So it's like on this axis you have infinite natural frequencies. So let's say this is omega axis. So these frequencies are located at discrete locations, but they are infinite in nature, because you have a continuous system which is nothing but a system with infinite number of degrees of freedom. So as many number of degrees of freedom you have in your system, those many number of natural frequencies you are going to get. So that's why we are getting infinite number of natural frequencies. Okay, so we should also get something called as mode shapes in this case also, right? So let's try to see whether we can find out that. So what is that? That is nothing but so let's try to see what is y that we have obtained, so that that thing will be clear to you. Y is b2 into sine of omega by c. Now we know that omega n is equal to n c pi by l. So omega n by c happens to be equal to n pi by l. So you are going to pick this one and put it over here. So you get to see n pi by l times x times a cosine omega n1 omega nt plus b sine omega nt. Okay, this is what is time variation. This is what is I am going to call as amplitude, and this is what is a shape that you are getting from here, which is called as mode shape. Okay, so which is equivalent to eigenvector that you were getting in multi-degree of freedom system. So mode shape in this continuous system is also a continuous function of x, which is equal to sine n pi x by L, and corresponding natural frequency is equal to n c pi by L. This is corresponding natural frequency. Okay, for this frequency, this is the mode shape. So which essentially means that if you plot this mode shape, so let's say this is the mode shape for n equal to 1. So this is what is going to be the mode shape, which essentially is going to tell you that this is the relationship between amplitudes of vibration of string at all location. So let's say if you are seeing part of a string at this location and part of a string at this location, then you will be able to see that displacement of this point and this point will always be in this same proportion that you see over here. Okay, only thing is that what is getting multiplied to this, which is this thing, this term, time dependent term, that is going to change. So this shape as is, that is going to vibrate. So this entire shape vibrates. Okay, so as time changes, that entire shape is getting multiplied by this term, okay, and this term. Okay, so this is what is the vibration of transverse string that we are almost done with. Okay, however, we are yet to incorporate initial conditions. Okay, so when we'll be able to incorporate initial conditions, we'll be able to find out other two constants. So now let me once again write down this y by taking this b2 inside over here. Okay, and I'll be absorbing this b2 inside. So I'll be writing it down in this way: sine of n pi x over L times, I'll be naming it as a bar because it is a multiplied by b2 into cosine of omega n t plus b bar multiplied by sine omega nt. This is what is y for string, and here onwards you will have to incorporate initial conditions first of all to go ahead. And what are those initial conditions? That all x values and time t equal to 0, you have this as the distribution of the displacement, and for knowing displacement velocity distribution at all x locations, but for time t equal to 0, you will have to go to this. Okay, so f of x is telling you that velocity distribution along x-axis. Okay, so what you will be doing is you will be evaluating this part at time t equal to 0, then you will get y of x at 0, which will be equal to, so if you evaluate this, then only this a bar term will remain, that a bar cosine omega nt will also be equal to 1, and only you are going to get a bar sine of n pi x by L, right? However, yeah, there is one thing that I have missed. Okay, so we have infinite number of omega n's. Okay, so before we go to this, okay, we need to take care of that as well. Okay, so forgive me for that, and let's try to have a look at that once again. So we have infinite number of y's, okay, where depending on what is the value of n, you are going to get that particular y. So I can write down y as summation of yn's, where I'll be putting certain weights to them. Okay, and each yn is what? Each yn is this times this times this. Okay, so if you put 1 over here, you will be putting 1 over here, right? If you put 2 over here, you will be putting 2 over here. So such infinite multiplications are going to give you, so that I'll be writing it down in this way, which will be equal to summation of sine of n pi x by L times a bar cosine omega nt plus b bar sine omega nt. Okay, because you have essentially infinite solutions. The way in earlier cases we used to get two solutions, then what we used to say that linear combination of these two solutions, if you do that, then you will be able to find out the final solution. Now in the similar fashion we will have to take linear combination of all these yns. Okay, so we'll have to sum this yns with certain weights attached to it. Now this weight you can absorb inside this a bar and b bar, so I'm not writing that weight separately over here, but that weight can be absorbed over here in a bar and b bar. Okay, and you can write it down directly like this. Even if you put cn over here, that's not going to make any change. Okay, but that weight can be absorbed over here in a bar and b bar, and this n ranging from 1 to infinity, summation over all these infinite n's is what is the solution of y. Okay, now here onwards we will have to invoke those initial conditions, that y at all x and time t equal to 0 should be equal to 0. Okay, so in that case we will be getting in summation of infinite sines and cosines, and we'll be writing it down in this way. You are going to be left with only a bar m. I'll be writing down n to this a bar and b bar also, because these are going to change. These values of a bar will change as you move from one n value to another n value. So this is what is that expression, which is equal to g of x. So you have boiled down your problem to finding out these infinite number of ans, and we are yet to find out infinite number of bn's, and that will be able to find out by exploiting that velocity initial condition, which is y dot at x and time t equal to 0 is equal to this was g of x, and this is f of x. Okay, so if you do so, then what you get is this other equation. I will be writing it down over here, which is equal to summation from 1 to infinity, and then you have the sign will change into cosine, I guess. Yeah, no, its sign will remain as sign because we are differentiating with time only. Sine is function, this sign of n pi x is function of x, it's not going to change. I'm so sorry, it has to remain as is, and only this part, which is this time dependent part, that will be differentiated once with respect to time, and then you are going to put value of time t as 0 over there in that, and if you do so, then what you get is this n pi c by l times bn bar. Okay, this is equal to f of x. So you have obtained these two equations, which are actually two sets of infinite equations, in which what are unknowns? These infinite ans are unknowns and these infinite bn's are unknowns. So you have boiled down your entire problem to finding out this infinite ans and infinite bn's. Okay, and how to find out these infinite values? They are really difficult to find out, right? Because they are in the summation. So what we'll be doing is, let's try to see one first equation first of all. So once we are done with finding out an, it will be similar one for bn. Okay, so you have n bar sitting over here, sine of n pi x is over here, sine of n pi x by l is over here, and that is equal to, that stuff is equal to f of x, or not f of x, it's g of x. Okay, now what I'll be doing is, let me say that I want to find out for certain value of n, let's say n is taking value equal to m, okay, which is one value of n, and for that n what is this a bar n? I am interested in finding it out. So what I'll be doing is, I'll be multiplying by sine of m pi x by L to this entire set of equations. This entire equation, this is not set, this is single equation, and integrating it from 0 to L. So I am multiplying by this sine m pi x by L, okay, and then I am integrating this entire equation from 0 to L. This is only one side of the equation, okay, and the other side will also look like this. Okay, now what is going to happen is that this m is a single value, but n is taking different values from 1 to infinity, okay. At certain time it will take value equal to m as well, okay, but otherwise value of this n will be different than value of m. And you know that integration of sines of two different frequencies, if you do so, then you will get 0 as the answer, okay. So if m is not equal to n, then integration of sine m pi x by L into sine n pi x by L, this is going to be equal to 0, okay. This is for sure, okay. This happens, so you can just give it a try, okay. So when m and n are not equal, then that integration goes to 0, and hence what will happen is that from this earlier equation, everything else will go to 0 except when n becomes equal to m, and you will be left with only that term which will be equal to sine square m pi x by L times a bar m dx from 0 to L is equal to integration 0 to L sine m pi x by L multiplied by g of x dx. Okay, now you know value of m, you are picking up the value of m, so you know this, you know this, you know this, and you can carry out this integration and solve for a bar m, which actually doesn't depend on x, and it has to come out of this integration, and hence a bar m will be equal to integration of this quantity divided by integration of sine square m pi x by L dx. Okay, so this is how we have found out a bar m. Similarly, you can find out that b bar m as well, okay, in the similar fashion. Okay, so what you will be doing is, you will be multiplying by sine m pi x by L to this equation, the second equation, and then you will be integrating it from 0 to L over the entire domain, and you will be able to find out that you are going to get only one single value of bm from that, and you can find out that value easily in that sense, okay. So this is what is the story of free vibration of string. However, I want to make out one thing over here, that when we were doing this calculation, we said that when m is not equal to n, that is when m and n are different, then this integration, this multiplication and an integration happens to be equal to 0. Okay, so it has its roots in modal orthogonality. So whatever modal orthogonality we have seen in case of multi-degree of freedom system, that modal orthogonality stays over here as well in continuous system, and since that modal orthogonality exists, therefore this multiplication is going to go to 0. Okay, so we'll stop over here for this lecture, in which we have seen how can we find out free vibration response of a string, okay, for certain initial conditions, and there are no any externally applied forcing specified on this string. And we have considered specifically string which is fixed at two edges. In the similar fashion, you can find out natural frequencies, mode shapes for string which is having different boundary conditions, and you can also solve for displacement response of that string for certain initial conditions. Okay, so we'll be stopping over here. Thank you so much.